we are joined by Gamiel Yafai, who is the MD of Diversity Marketplace. So this is our speaker chat with one of our fabulous speakers. Now, Gamiel, you run a consultancy called Diversity Marketplace, which is a consultancy where you offer practical solutions towards inclusion. So in your own words, if you can tell me a little bit about the company, what you do, why you set up, and more importantly, why did you get into diversity and inclusion? What was your motivation behind getting into the industry in the first place?
Mina, firstly, good morning to you, and thank you for inviting me to be a guest. I've been really fortunate. Like most people involved in diversity and inclusion, you get involved by fluke. It's not planned or anything else, it just happens. And I was fortunate enough to be working in publishing for about 15 years. And my last 2 years in publishing, I became a troubleshooter, moving from magazine to magazine. And then I got headhunted by an organisation called Job Opportunities that asked me to come in and be their public sector director. And I thought, okay, it's quite an easy job. It was magazines, it was recruitment, and I thought, yeah, this is great. But when I got there was very little differentiation between that publication and everything else that was out there in terms of recruitment, apart from the fact that it was free, but there needed to be a lot more. So with my business case and my business hat on, I thought, right, I need to find something. And again, another fluke, probably a number of flukes that happen along this way. But I went to a conference because a colleague of mine, a chap called David Beanie, who is still a brilliant friend of mine, couldn't go to a conference. And it was a conference about the Black MBA. And I went to that conference and I was just staggered by the amount of talent that attended that conference that struggled to get work or struggled to get, in front of organisations. And as I was walking out of the building, I thought, right, well, having spoken to a few people, one of the biggest challenges was, finding out about what was available. They weren't involved in the networks that connected them as widely as other people. And I thought, wow, we've got a publication that goes into every petrol station, every supermarket, all free, be able to access this publication. And I thought, right, something else we could do was add on mosques, synagogues, temples, Asian women's projects, African Caribbean centres, and literally started off building a database of 1,000 minority organisations across London to start off with, and send the publications into those organisations so that it widened the opportunities. Diversity and inclusion to me was a case of, okay, how can we make more money? Because the Commission for Racial Equality, and the amendments to the Race Relations Act meant that all public bodies needed to be targeting more individuals from diverse backgrounds. We had this publication that reached those individuals, and it just became the selling point of job opportunities. And it was purely about how could we make more money. I increased the size of the teams. We got more, we hired loads of sales individuals from minority backgrounds, and suddenly it just boomed. It was incredible. We went from 4 publications that we started off with to 22 publications within 3 years. Wow. And so for me, it was all about the business case, purely the business case. It was about money. How much more money could I make from my employer? How could I couldn't really rise much further than a public sector director, but I got an additional title. My title became Public Sector and Diversity. Public Sector and Diversity Director. And that was in my first year of working there. Yeah, so by 2005, I decided that I wanted to do more work around the moral and the social case for diversity and inclusion. I set up Diversity Marketplace. However, I set up Diversity Marketplace in August of 2005. And in November, I got invited to head up the diversity practice for Penna. And Penna became my first client. And I did 3 days a week for 3.5 years as head of their diversity practice. And that helped me build up Diversity Marketplace. So I know that may be a bit long-winded, but hopefully, gosh, 15 years later as Diversity Marketplace, and we are busier than ever, but the challenges are different now. And that, and that leads into why it's really, really important for us to have conferences such as yours.
I was going to actually say that, you've obviously been in diversity and inclusion for so many years now, and you must have seen lots of changes along the way, both positive and negative. Tell us a couple of examples of the challenges that people face in the workplace. Say again, how they've overcome it, and whether there are any challenges where, what happened 15 odd years ago are still the same and still happening today.
Oh my God. To be honest with you, I mean, I started doing research at Havas in 2003. And all of the research that I've done, and we've done 36 pieces of research around the perceptions of minority groups towards employers, but also the reality of working for those employers from minority perspectives. And, our first one was in 2003. We've got 2 running at the moment, and I can guarantee you that 95% of the feedback that we got in 2003 is identical to the feedback that we've got now. And those are the challenges in terms of individuals from ethnic minority backgrounds, or women, or people with disabilities, having to show that they're working twice, if not 3 or 4 times harder than their colleagues, that they're always the first ones to be challenged rather than the white colleagues, that, in terms of promotion. I was talking to a really good friend called Rob Neal. He ran Project Race for the civil service, and he said it took him probably 10 years to notice his colour in an organisation. And what he meant by that was, he was doing really well in recruiting loads of people and getting fantastic individuals into the organisation, but not really noticing that they were being promoted above him and beyond him. And even though he was doing a brilliant job, but he didn't notice his colour, he didn't notice that was part of the challenge of him being promoted. And, and there's loads and loads of examples. But ultimately, the biggest challenge that employers have is around the culture. We talk about explicit culture of organizations and all the stuff that's going on at the moment. We're hearing lots of positive feedback from major brands across the world going, we support individuals from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds. We do not see colour as a problem. Well, sadly, if they don't see colour as a challenge, then they're part of the issue. And we're seeing all of this sort of explicit stuff because a lot of it's in their policies, in their, you could say, in all of their documentation, their websites and everything else. But the reality is there is a hidden and shadow culture in every single organisation, which is one of the reasons that we haven't progressed as much when it comes to diversity and inclusion within organisations. And the pace of growth and is purely down to the fact that organisations just they still see diversity and inclusion as being an awareness or communications challenge rather than a culture, a systems, of processes. And they don't want to invest in those, or they don't realise why they need to invest. And things will start happening. I will talk about the book briefly because it links in nicely into this section. So Demystifying Diversity will be out in the next couple of months. But one of the sections in there talks to COVID and what could potentially happen afterwards in terms of we could advance by 20, 30 years if we adapt some of the processes that are being put in place to ensure that employees can work at home. For example, one of those could be that all of those women who have had to leave work because their employers have not been flexible enough to allow them to work part-time, or all of those individuals with disabilities and neurodiverse conditions who are at home because they cannot work in an office, that they could do phenomenal work from their home. This has the potential to open up such a huge potential to the workplace. But we need to be proactive. We need to be, this has to be done in a way that's consciously inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely true. And there's so many different things that we can do now that we've proved we can literally do overnight, because the whole world just literally went from all working in the office to all working at home within 48 hours. And it's also, as you say, parents with young children, both men and women, sharing that responsibility, and people with disabilities, hidden disabilities as well. And also, women who are of a particular age, the slightly older people going through the change. It's quite difficult for them. But I'm in my 40s and I'm thinking, well, I'm sure I'll be hitting some of those characteristics quite soon. And I've always felt in the workplace that, a lot of the time I was overlooked because I was slightly older than my colleagues were, very young, fresh out of uni or in the early 20s, and I was more like in my 30s, sort of mid-30s. And I'm thinking, well, I've got a lot of experience to bring to the party and bring to the table to an organisation. Absolutely, these youngsters also have a lot of ideas, fresh ways of thinking, which we absolutely need. That's finding that partnership, isn't it, to work together?
It's interesting because, again, this is, strangely enough, we're just talking about two chapters in our book, one being the COVID chapter and the next one being cognitive diversity. And this is a thing that a lot of organisations don't get or don't allow to happen, because cognitive diversity is that diversity of thinking, innovation, creativity that we all have, but that showcases itself when people who are different work together. You get more, when we get women and men working together, it's not just about the difference in grades or relationships. It's about that cognitive, it's about that thinking, that innovation, creativity that creates the magic. And a lot of organizations haven't seen the magic from diversity because they haven't allowed for cognitive diversity to actually be nurtured in their organizations.
And that's the thing, you've got to hit the nail on the head. It's about that nurturing and that allowing things to happen. It's about pushing the boundaries, being open-minded, embracing different people, different cultures, different characteristics, to actually come together as a team and work together, because they'll all have different ideas, they'll all have different working experience, personal experience, cultural experience, and cultural not only meaning sort of religious and ethnic cultures, but working cultures as well, but different places where they've worked. So bringing all those people together would create such a fantastic team, almost like fireworks, but fireworks in a positive way, colourful and being really out there, which is so important. And that's the kind of reason why I fell into diversity. As you say, fluke. I mean, I had as you said, I've experienced a little bit of indirect racism, I guess, being an Asian woman of mixed ethnic minority, being slightly older in the workplace as well. But also, I have a friend who's one of my dearest friends, who is, LGBT and, perhaps isn't so confident about it. So I've really supported them in their journey. And then also from my personal experience has helped me sort of realise, and as you say, recognise my colour. Recognize that although I'm Asian and the next person is black, the next person is white, we all have different strengths, and it doesn't mean that you're white or you're black or you're Asian or that you are any less than the next person. And that kind of brings me on to why I created This Is Us conference, is to educate, inform and make organizations aware that there's a need for diversity. Why have it as a tick box just because you think you have to do it? Build it into your culture. That's so important. It kind of brings me on to how you and I met. We were, I think, introduced, or how we met, I'm not sure, but it was through diversity and our passion for diversity. And you've been my mentor, my supporter, my guide, my friend, just guiding me along the way. And of course, I'm ever so grateful about that. And you very kindly spoke at the conference last year, and this year you're sort of chairing up the BAME section. So tell us a little bit more about how you see your role in the conference, and just in your own words.
Okay, to be honest with you, I see my role quite simply as ensuring that we have a conference that allows for voices to be heard, faces to be seen, and changes to be made.
That's fantastic. That just summarises everything, doesn't it? Summarises everything so simply, but so effectively. And having known you for about 3 years now, I feel so passionate, and every time I speak to you, every time we meet, we have such a passionate conversation about diversity that it really motivates me. And also when I speak to Jackie Gavin, another person who supported me, and every time I speak to her as well, she kind of lifts up my spirit. And that just goes to show that we're 3 different people that all come together and gel over diversity and inclusion. And that just kind of shows how important it is.
Well, it's quite interesting, and again, that shows the different cognitive diversity that exists. And I remember when you first asked me about who could support the LGBT event, and I mentioned Jackie and Natalie, and they are and that's Natalie Sagona, such passionate people. But we are all different. We are so different in so many different ways, but so similar in others. And and it's for all of us to support each other. I mean, you thank me for supporting you. You'd be amazed at all of the different things that you do that have an impact on the way I work, and just attending and talking to those individuals last year who all had different life experiences. And it's those life experiences that we need to tap into, because for diversity and inclusion, and again, we mustn't forget the impact of inclusion, because if we don't focus on inclusion, diversity will never happen. But we must remember that we need to bring people together, and we need to meet people where they're at. And I think that's really important. It doesn't matter if people, aren't on the same understanding level as us. If there's a willingness, then we need to help move them from where they are to where they need to be. And if we don't appreciate where they're at, then we're not really focusing on what we can really do to support them. We're just focusing on our agenda, and we need to be able to be conscious of their agenda as well and support them to move forward. So firstly, thank you very much for your kind words. It's always lovely sort of talking to you, and really just having a chat, because that's all we're doing. We're just having a chat, and this is part of our normal. This is part of our normal conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this isn't really any different, but this is how it needs to be. We need to create safe environments for people to feel comfortable to talk to each other, and to be open, and not to be afraid of what they say. And if they say something that they feel is inappropriate, they check with somebody else. Or if somebody feels that that somebody else has said something that's inappropriate, then they literally support them by assuming good intent. And good intent is just asking somebody, and I love I've always used the ouch. As soon as somebody says something I think is inappropriate, I go, ouch. And they turn around to me and they go, what did I say now? Because they're so used to me. But I go, do you realise the impact of what you've just said? And they go, they go, no, because we don't, because we're not in it. Well, a lot of people aren't in it, they don't understand it. And the sad thing is, we will never be able to get everybody in society to step into the shoes of somebody that's disadvantaged, although that will be the next evolution of training in terms of what virtual reality and augmented reality can actually do. And I'll talk to you about what we're doing in those areas at another time.
No, sure, absolutely. And regarding the diversity and inclusion, at the conference, why do you think these events are important for people to attend? What can you say is your top reason for people to attend a conference like this as well?
In order to be inclusive leaders, everybody thinks that they're really good at diversity and inclusion. Most of the employers think that they're not, they don't discriminate, or they don't they push for inclusive cultures, but the reality is they don't hear the stories. At events such as yours, people get to hear the real experiences of individuals and how they impact on the lives of not just them, but their families and their friends and society in general. And you can't feel that unless you're there, unless you're listening to it. You can read as much as you like, but lived experience is everything. And when you hear somebody talking passionately about their own experiences, you can't get anything better. And I think your conferences do that phenomenally, because everybody tells a story about themselves first. So
that's really important. I mean, that was so I know a lot of people outsource all their kind of speaker outreach programs and how they recruit speakers. They'll probably go to a speaker bureau, but for me it's all about that personal touch. I mean, I will only go or engage with a speaker who's been either somebody who I've met myself, or I've heard at another conference or event, or I've met through society or through the community, or has been recommended by somebody, say like yourself or any other speaker, because it's all about that personal experience. I mean, I am very personal and very passionate about diversity, and of course this is my own event, my own business, my own brand, that it's so important to make it personal, because that's what makes it different from standing in front of an audience of 300 people to standing in front of an audience working in smaller groups of, say, 40, 50, 60. It's about having that relationship between speakers and delegates, and having and enabling that partnership for delegates to share their experiences with speakers and vice versa. So everybody in the room learns together and works together in smaller groups. And that's really, really important. That brings us, more or less to the end of our chat. And it's obviously, as usual, lovely chatting to you. So just to have a little bit more information or insight into Gamiel himself, I always ask my speakers like a different personal question. So today I'm going to ask you about food, what your favourite food is and why.
Well, I was born in a lovely place called Sparkbrook in Birmingham. And when, just showing my age, when I was sort of growing up, there weren't any Indian restaurants, and the first one was on a lovely road called Ladypool Road, and then they created the Balti Triangle. So I think my dad took me for my first curry when I was about 9, and I'm just a curry lover. I had curry to scrambled eggs. I had curry to you name it. But yeah, I don't add it to everything. But yeah, no, I'm not a convert. I mean, my grandfather, my mother's father, was born in Hyderabad in India, and he used to make the brilliant green curries. Wow. But it wasn't until sort of the Balti shops on Ladypool Road started to open that I got to experience anything different. But yeah, I'm a curry lover. However, saying that, I like a bit of diversity now and again. I don't mind my fish and chips. I love pies and yeah, macaroni and cheese. I just love food. But yeah.
Gamiel, tell everybody how they can find you, what your website is, if they want some more information about Diversity Marketplace.
Well, you can find so much information on diversitymarketplace.co.uk. You can find me on LinkedIn under Gamiel Yafai. I'm the only Gamiel Yafai. You can find me if you put my name into Google. Again, I'm the only Gamiel Yafai. I'm just, sadly, there are advantages and disadvantages of having a different name. I have the advantage, but sadly a lot of people don't, because people do not value other people's names. But yeah, you put Gamiel Yafai into Google and you'll find out an awful lot about me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and great to chat as always. And I really look forward to seeing you in October.
Okay. Thank you. You take care, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Great.